I never imagined that a single laptop could become the centerpiece of the night that would change everything. My name is Dominic. I'm 38, and I've been married to Eleanor for 12 years. From the start, we had that effortless chemistry, the way she laughed at my worst jokes, the way we could sit in silence, and it never felt awkward. I wasn't perfect, I never claimed to be, but I worked hard. I provided, I protected, and I tried to love her in every way I knew how. For years, I thought that was enough. Lately, though, things had shifted. It wasn't abrupt. Nothing ever is in marriages like ours. The first hints were subtle. She stopped texting me during lunch. Her smiles became polite instead of genuine, and sometimes she would come home with an energy that felt rehearsed, like she was performing for someone else's eyes. I chalked it up to stress at first. Her job at the architecture firm was demanding, deadlines piled up, and she traveled more than usual. But there was this nagging sensation, like a cloud hovering in the corner of my mind that I couldn't ignore. The night in question started innocuously. I had stayed late at the office, finishing up a client presentation that was due the next morning. I sent her a quick text, "Running late, see you soon." She replied almost immediately with a smiling emoji. That should have been comforting. That should have reassured me. But instinctively, I felt that something was off. When I arrived home, the house was unusually quiet. Not the calm you welcome after a long day, but the eerie stillness that signals something is wrong. The first thing I noticed was the absence of my laptop, which I always leave on the kitchen counter. My gut clenched. That laptop contained all my work files, personal photos, everything I relied on. I immediately searched the usual spots, the counter, the living room, even the bedroom, but it was gone. Panic started to rise, but before I could let it consume me, I remembered our last conversation. She had joked about me being too absorbed in work that I never noticed when she needed me. My chest tightened. Could this be her way of getting me to finally come home and notice? My rational mind tried to reason with my racing heart. Maybe she misplaced it. Maybe it was a harmless prank. I called her name softly, moving through the house, and then I heard it, a low laugh from the bedroom. My heart stopped. The sound wasn't casual. It wasn't fleeting. It carried a familiarity, a tone that immediately put me on edge. I walked closer, each step measured, yet I felt my hands shaking under the surface. The door was slightly ajar, and through the small gap, I saw them. There he was, a man I didn't recognize, sitting comfortably beside her, his arm draped across the back of the couch. Eleanor was leaning toward him, laughing in a way I hadn't heard in months. Not just laughing, giggling, whispering, leaning in. The realization hit me like a punch to the chest. She had intended this. My laptop wasn't lost. It was bait. She wanted me to come home, catch her, and react. For a moment, I froze. Every instinct screamed to confront, to yell, to break the scene apart. But then I did something I didn't expect. I stepped back. I inhaled deeply, feeling the familiar rhythm of my pulse. This wasn't a movie. There were no dramatic lighting cues, no cinematic revenge to enact. There was only me and the cold clarity that had been building over the past months. I retreated to the hallway, keeping my eyes on them, but not letting them see mine. I could hear their conversation, fragments of it anyway, flirtatious remarks, inside jokes, the casual intimacy that was once mine. And in that moment, I understood something fundamental. This wasn't about him. It was never about him. It was about her control, about testing my limits, about proving to herself that she still held power over me. I walked slowly toward the kitchen, silently retrieving my gym bag from the closet. I wasn't packing to leave in anger. I wasn't preparing for a fight. I was preparing to reclaim my dignity, to step out of a scenario where I was expected to react emotionally, where my pain was entertainment. I packed a few essentials, my laptop charger, a change of clothes, a toothbrush, and without looking back, I slipped out the front door. The street was quiet, the night air crisp against my skin. I drove without a destination, letting the road guide me, letting the silence wrap around me like a protective cocoon. I felt no anger, no desire for confrontation. I felt clarity. For years, I had invested my energy, my attention, my love, and I had been met with manipulation, secrecy, and betrayal. This wasn't my failure. It was a truth I had been avoiding. She had chosen a different path, and it wasn't mine to fight. I found myself at a friend's apartment, someone who had known both of us for years. Mason greeted me with the kind of quiet understanding that doesn't ask questions or demand explanations. I sat on his couch, still holding my bag in my lap, and for the first time in months, I allowed myself to breathe without tension, without anticipation of confrontation. Over the next hour, I thought through everything, every subtle shift, every ignored sign, every moment I had rationalized her behavior as stress or tiredness. Each memory was a small stitch in the fabric of reality I had been weaving for myself. But the truth had a way of unraveling the pattern all at once. Eleanor had planned this. She had orchestrated a moment designed to provoke, to manipulate, to test me. And I had not given her the reaction she wanted. I had not allowed her control to dictate my dignity. I didn't call her. I didn't text. I didn't confront. I simply sat with the understanding that sometimes the greatest act of power isn't in retaliation, but in calm refusal to participate in someone else's game. The hours passed slowly. I thought about what it meant to be married, to trust, to give everything and still feel unseen. And then I realized something unexpected. I felt relief. Not the sharp, bitter relief of leaving in anger, but a quiet, steady sense of self-preservation. By the time I returned home the next morning, Eleanor was gone. The apartment was empty except for traces of the previous night, the faint scent of her perfume lingering, the laptop back in its usual spot, untouched, as if it had never been the bait. And I understood something else. Her games could no longer reach me. I had stepped out of the narrative she tried to script, and in doing so, I reclaimed my story. I spent the day going through emails, cleaning up work files, making calls, maintaining the rhythm of life as if nothing had happened. But everything had shifted. I wasn't seeking revenge. I wasn't hoping for confrontation. I simply existed within a clarity that had eluded me for years. And in that quiet, deliberate space, I understood that leaving her to her own choices, while preserving my own dignity, was the truest act of control I could exercise. Sometimes, it's the smallest provocations, the hidden laptop, the whispered joke, the staged laughter, that reveal the most profound truths. I walked through the house that night, pausing at the doorway, acknowledging the life I had built and the life I was reclaiming. Eleanor's intentions, manipulations, and tests no longer held sway over me. I felt lighter, clearer, and more alive than I had in years. And in that quiet, uncelebrated victory, I finally understood what it meant to step out of a story written by someone else and begin writing my own.